Hey guys, tonight we travel somewhere icy, somewhere ancient, somewhere shaped more by bone and story than by stone or steel. You're standing at the edge of an abyss. No stars, no moon. Just cold that bites your teeth and heat that doesn't glow, only swells. This isn't a cozy place. It's Ginnungagap, the great yawning void from Viking creation myth. And trust me, you probably won't survive this next part. But we're here for the dream of it, not the disaster. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is there. I love seeing how far these sleepy little history tales travel. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You hover, metaphorically of course, over a nothingness so vast that even the gods haven't shown up yet. On one side of this primordial gap lies Niflheim, a world of mist, frost, and ice, so cold it makes your eyelids hurt just thinking about blinking. On the other side, Muspelheim, a land of fire, smoke, and roaring heat. It's basically the universe's most awkward long-distance relationship. Between them, this rift. And for a very long time, absolutely nothing happened. Until it did. Because as Viking myth goes, the heat from Muspelheim finally melted some of the frost drifting in from Niflheim. The result? Not puddles, not steam. A giant. Ymir, who, like many mythic first creatures, immediately complicates things by being both very powerful and very gross. See, Ymir wasn't born from parents. He was more like what happens when the universe has indigestion. And he didn't just exist, he sweated smaller giants out of his armpits. Yes, that's how new life began. Sweaty underarm giants. Welcome to Norse mythology, where subtlety is optional. Oh, and nearby, a cow made of frost licked salty ice blocks until the first god bury emerged, like a yogurt commercial from a nightmare. Historians still argue whether this part of the myth was meant to be metaphorical or just a really weird bedtime story that spiraled out of control. Either way, Buri led to more gods, including Odin, who would eventually become the top god, the wise wanderer, the war god, with one eye and a whole lot of existential dread. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's just say things escalated quickly. Odin and his two brothers, Vili and Ve, looked around at the mess that was Ymir and said, "Cool origin story, now let's clean house." So they killed him. They didn't just kill him, they repurposed him. Ymir's body became the raw material for everything. His flesh turned into earth, his bones into mountains, his blood into oceans, and his skull became the dome of the sky. His brains clouds, which explains a lot, honestly. If this all feels a little intense, it's because it is. Creation myths often involve chaos being turned into order, but few go as full-on butchery carpenter as the Norse. And yet, out of this grim creativity came structure, world, meaning, and the need to connect it all. Cue the world tree. Yggdrasil. A name you've probably seen on t-shirts and Viking shows, but tonight we're going to understand why it mattered so deeply. Why, in the Norse imagination, the world couldn't just be, it had to be held, supported, intertwined, rooted, and what better shape than a tree? Not a metaphorical tree either. This was no dreamy grove whispering abstract symbols. Yggdrasil was real to them. It stretched from the depths of the underworld to the highest heavens. It was the world. Everything else, the gods, the monsters, the humans, fumbling around in Midgard, they lived on it, in it, or around it. And it wasn't just pretty. It was alive and under threat. The tree would become the backbone of a Norse cosmology, a cosmic map that held 9 worlds each with its own rules, dangers, and drama. Think of it as a multi-dimensional filing system, except instead of folders, You get dwarves forging magic rings, elves being vaguely mysterious, and a dragon chewing on the tree's roots like it's a giant salad bar. But here at the beginning, it's just forming. You're watching it unfurl in your mind, maybe with branches that shimmer like starlight and roots that curl through darkness older than death. The Vikings didn't just admire trees, they relied on them for warmth, for ships, for homes, for tools. They saw the forest as living, breathing, whispering with stories and omens. So of course they would imagine their universe as a tree. A giant, sacred ash tree whose leaves whispered fate and whose trunk was the spine of existence. And so, even though the sky is still technically a dead giant's skull, and the oceans are, well, you get it. The world is beginning to make sense. It has a structure now, a shape, a reason, even if that reason sometimes includes cows licking ice into men and sweaty armpit giants. You sip your own tea, maybe not from a horn cup, but close enough, and lean back into the image. Because next, we're going to build the world with the gods. And things are about to get even stranger. The air shifts around you now, no longer the chill void of Ginnungagap, but something denser, earthier, like soil pressed beneath centuries of roots. You're standing on firm ground for the first time, and it's not just any land. It's the world shaped from Ymir's body, stretched and hammered into being by three very ambitious gods, Odin, Vili, and Ve. Welcome to Midgard, literally the middle enclosure. Your new home. The first thing you notice is how oddly structured it feels. Like someone looked at chaos, sighed, rolled up their sleeves, and decided to make a really intense diorama. To the Norse mind, the world had boundaries, actual edges. Not metaphorical. We don't know what's beyond here boundaries, but real physical limits. Think walls made of Ymir's eyebrows. Yes, his eyebrows. That's what supposedly formed the barrier around Midgard, keeping the terrifying forces of Jotunheim, land of the giants, from crashing the party. The giants, you'll notice, weren't entirely banished, just kept at a distance, which is very Norse. They didn't erase the scary stuff, they just set up fences. And this new world? It didn't float in space or hang from invisible strings. It rested on something. Yggdrasil. Now more than a looming concept, the world tree took form, enormous, rooted in the deepest realms, its branches high enough to brush the heavens. Picture it, a single colossal ash tree, connecting the cosmos like a divine elevator system. No leaves with inspirational quotes here. This tree holds realms, 9 to be exact. Though historians still argue whether the number 9 was symbolic or literal, and whether all the realms were formally established during the Viking Age or patched together later by poets who liked the idea of cosmic symmetry. Either way, the number stuck. Midgard, Earth, your realm, is just one of them, balanced somewhere between the highest and lowest points, a little messy, a little mortal, a little magic adjacent. Above you, Asgard, the home of the Aesir gods, sparkles like golden rooftops behind clouds. Below you, Niflheim and Helheim, damp dark, the final destinations of souls, with more sigh than glory. And between them, all branches. So many branches. Yggdrasil doesn't just connect, it breathes, it grows, it groans. At its base, a trio of Norns, mystical fate women, carve the destinies of everyone from gods to goats. They sit by a sacred well, Urdarbrunner, dipping their ladles into fate water, painting runes into the roots. If this feels more poetic than practical, you're absolutely right. But the Norse didn't care about tidy mechanics. They cared about meaning. And this tree, it meant everything. You might ask, why a tree? Well, for starters, the Vikings were tree people. Forests were central to life in Scandinavia. The thick northern woods gave them shelter, fuel, weapons, and a spiritual backdrop. Even their burial mounds often mirrored natural hills, as if returning the dead to the roots. A tree wasn't just a plant, it was a map, a ladder, a living axis, a symbol of permanence in a world where winter killed and war never quite stopped. And unlike a throne or a temple, a tree doesn't dominate. It invites, it shelters, it listens. Underneath its vast canopy, anything could happen. In fact, everything did. Gods climbed it, giants gnawed at it, eagles nested in it, and at least one very opinionated squirrel ran up and down its trunk all day, spreading gossip between the eagle at the top and a dragon at the roots. The squirrel's name, Ratatoskr, which might sound like a death metal band, but literally means drill tooth. And yes, this tree has a drama-stirring rodent built into its ecosystem. Even now, standing at the edge of this mythic design, you can feel how tightly woven the Norse universe was. Not vast and lonely like modern space, but crowded and vertical. Things were above or below, climbing or falling, growing or rotting. No empty gaps, no endless sky, just the tree always there. And while later cultures turned their cosmologies into spheres and heavens, the Norse kept it wild, almost tactile. Their world was wood and root flame and ice, held together by a thing that lives. A thing that hurts too. Because here's the kicker. Yggdrasil isn't just majestic, it's suffering. In nearly every myth, the tree is under stress. Its bark is chewed, its roots are rotting. Its branches quake from the weight of fate and prophecy, and still it stands. Which tells you something about how the Norse saw the world. It wasn't perfect. It was enduring, resilient, alive. They knew nature gave, but also took. That life grew beautiful things from rot. That even if a dragon's chewing your roots, you can still stand tall. You take a breath now, feel the imagined bark beneath your palm, the deep hum of ancient wood. You're not just on the tree, you're of it. That's how deeply this belief ran. The Vikings didn't see themselves as separate from Yggdrasil. They were its leaves, its twigs, its whispers in the wind. And if you listen, really listen, you might just hear the tree speaking back. Next, we'll climb a little higher. To Asgard. To gods with too many problems, golden halls, and an oddly deep concern with hammers. You ascend now, not in body, but in story along the invisible branches of Yggdrasil, drawn upward by the shimmer of golden roofs and the distant clang of something metallic and probably dramatic. The air changes as you rise. Thinner, brighter, the scent of smoke mixed with frost and something vaguely divine. Welcome to Asgard. You step into a realm that's as much fortress as it is home. Asgard doesn't sprawl like a city. It stands deliberate and elevated. Picture massive halls carved from stone and sun-winding paths, guarded by stern-eyed sentries and gates that gleam as if the stars themselves are trapped in their hinges. This is where the Aesir live, the primary pantheon of Norse gods, and a crew that's equal parts cosmic power and family drama, and at the heart of it all, a giant tree trunk running through everything. Because yes, even here, Yggdrasil is present. Its branches shade the halls, its roots anchor the myths, and its sap, well, probably fuels at least one type of prophecy. Your first stop is Valhalla. Not because you've died gloriously in battle, don't worry. We're not going full Viking funeral tonight, but because you're curious. You want to see how the gods envisioned their afterlife. And here it is, a hall with 540 doors wolf pelts for wallpaper and a mead fountain that never runs dry. Sounds like a college dorm designed by a war poet. Inside, warriors feast and brawl and laugh so hard it rattles the bones of the world. These are the Einarjar, chosen dead training for Ragnarok, the final battle to end all battles. It's not peaceful, but it's purposeful. The idea of eternal rest never quite caught on with the Vikings. Too boring. Odin presides, of course. You catch a glimpse of him now, tall-hooded, missing an eye, and wearing the expression of someone who's seen too much and plans to see more. He's not a gentle god. He's a seeker, a wanderer, a weaver of fate, and the one who, according to legend, sacrificed himself to Yggdrasil, hung from its branches for 9 nights pierced by a spear in exchange for knowledge of the runes. Historians still argue whether this myth was metaphorical, representing shamanic initiation, or literal echoing ancient Norse rites of symbolic death and rebirth. Either way, it's intense. Odin basically staged his own execution to learn the alphabet. That's commitment. And his knowledge? It wasn't trivia. It was the stuff that stitched the world together. Names of winds, secrets of fate, the hidden meanings behind bird calls and sword strokes. All pulled from the well of wisdom at the tree's roots. Mimisbrunner guarded by Mimir, a being so wise, Odin kept his severed head around for advice. As you do, you move through Asgard now, like a guest at a party that's part council, part prophecy, part bizarre family reunion. There's Thor storming into view like a walking thunderclap. Redbeard hammer in hand, looking like the kind of guy who hugs too hard and punches first anyway. His hammer Mjolnir isn't just a weapon, it's a cosmic equalizer. It levels giants, blesses marriages, and once got stolen, resulting in Thor having to cross-dress to get it back. Yes, really. The myth is called Thrymskvida, and it's as awkward as it sounds. Then there's Frigg Odin's wife, calm composed, knowing everything but saying very little. Her silence speaks volumes. Some believe she represents an older form of divine wisdom, predating even Odin's cryptic cool. You pass Baldur's Hall, now quiet and sealed. Baldur, the beautiful god who dreamed of his own death and could not avoid it. A story that ends with mistletoe mischief and one very weepy world. His fall is a hinge point, a reminder that even gods in golden halls cannot escape the threads of fate spun by the Norns below. And then there's Loki. You feel the shift before you see him, a tension in the light, a curl in the wind. He's here somewhere, shapeshifter, trickster, chaos wrapped in charm. He's the god who helps until he ruins everything. The one who gave birth to a horse, tricked a builder, and will eventually betray everyone. The Norse pantheon, unlike others, didn't keep its troublemakers in the margins. It put them at the dinner table. And you realize something as you look around. Asgard isn't perfect. It's magnificent, complex, vulnerable. Its gods argue, make mistakes, die. This was key to Norse belief. Even the divine was fragile. Unlike other mythologies where gods ruled absolutely from the heavens, Norse gods were constantly negotiating with fate, with each other, with the threat of destruction, and above them, always the tree. The roots wind beneath the golden palaces. The branches stretch over the rainbow bridge Bifrost that connects Asgard to Midgard. Even the gods are guests here, just higher up on the trunk. They feast in the shade of something older, wiser, wilder. You take it in now, the whole architecture of belief, not built on divine perfection, but on interconnection, struggle, beauty braided with ending. A tree doesn't last forever, and neither will Asgard. Ragnarok looms always, a future foretold where fire consumes the realms, gods fall, and the world ends in ash. But even that isn't the end. From the charred stump, something green will sprout. A new world, a rebirth. Because that's how trees work. They fall, they seed, they rise again. You glance up at the golden rooftops now softened by the night. You feel the trunk beneath your feet. You think about all the paths this tree holds up down sideways, strange. And then you climb down. Not because Asgard isn't worth staying in, but because there's more to see. Darkness calls, and so does a squirrel named Ratatoskr, still spreading gossip between an eagle and a dragon. This tree is alive, remember? And it's never quiet for long. You descend now, stepping carefully through branches that don't look like branches anymore, but bridges, arching spans of root and sinew, moss-draped walkways braided with stars. Below Asgard, past the glittering rooflines and the whisper of immortality, lies another realm. One closer to the trunk, closer to you. Midgard. Yes, welcome to Earth. Not our Earth with satellite dishes and seasonal allergies, but the Viking version, a flat disk surrounded by an impassable sea, encircled by a colossal serpent, biting its own tail. You heard that right. Jörmungandr the Midgard serpent wraps around the entire world like the universe's most problematic security blanket. Cozy in a way, if you ignore the apocalyptic implications. You stand now in the middle of Midgard, the human realm. It's familiar in a rough-hewn, wind-chapped sort of way. Stone houses with turf roofs, narrow fields scraped from reluctant soil, longships carved like dragon teeth lined along the shore. A place of work and waiting, of storms and story. And everywhere wood. The Vikings didn't just imagine the world as a tree, they lived it. Trees sheltered them, built their homes, carried their gods. Oak, ash, yew, each with its own spirit, its own purpose. You could walk into a grove and feel the hum of presence. Not metaphor, not decoration, presence. You pass a farmhouse now. Smoke drifts from the chimney, and inside you hear the creak of timbers, the clatter of bowls, the murmur of a bedtime story, something about Thor tricking a giant, or Odin whispering to birds. These weren't just tales for children. They were blueprints, cultural memory carved into words. The Norse didn't have a holy book, no commandments etched in stone. They had oral sagas, songs, riddles, and a tree big enough to hold all 9 realms and every hard winter that came with them. Midgard, for all its centrality, wasn't at the top of the cosmic food chain. You lived under threat. Giants might wander too close. The gods might start a war. And always that sea serpent coiled tight around the edge of the world, sleeping with one eye open. Historians still argue whether Jörmungandr was seen as evil neutral or simply inevitable. Some think he was a symbol of natural chaos, too vast to fight, too present to ignore. Others link him to lunar cycles, tidal rhythms, and the slow pulse of destruction that every seafarer feared and respected. But while gods clashed above and monsters coiled below, the people of Midgard made tea. Okay, not literally. The climate wasn't exactly jasmine-scented, but they did brew. Herbals, steeped roots, mead if you want to get technical, warm drinks by firelight, shared in longhouses where stories rolled like thunder. You picture a Viking now, fur cloak, windburned cheeks, laughing too loudly, and realize something: they didn't need cathedrals. They had fire pits and fables, and a tree big enough to make even the stars look like neighbors. The belief in Yggdrasil wasn't decorative. It was grounding. In a world where winter could kill you, where raiders might burn your farm, where the gods themselves occasionally exploded into drama and doom, Yggdrasil was stability, continuity, proof that even if your village vanished, the tree remained. And you were on it, part of the pattern, not by accident. You sit now beside a small stream. Its surface reflects the moon fractured by pebbles and reeds. You think about how the Vikings mapped this world, not with longitude or satellites, but with story, with place names that hinted at power: Thor's Ford, Odin's Seat, Freya's Meadow. They weren't labeling land, they were anchoring myth, reminding themselves this tree, this realm, this life, it matters. A fox slinks by, its eyes catching the light. It pauses, then disappears into the brush. Just another strand in the weave, just another thread on the trunk. And above you, the sky isn't empty. It's full of signs. The Norse believed the stars were sparks from Muspelheim, the fire realm flung across the heavens. The Milky Way, a road for souls. The Aurora Borealis, armor of the Valkyries, flashing across the night. It's poetic. It's terrifying. It's oddly comforting, because to them, everything connected. You were born of the earth, watched by gods, surrounded by giants, and cradled by a tree that hummed with memory. You didn't need to understand the world. You just needed to know you were in it, deeply, meaningfully, briefly. You stand again now, brushing moss from your hands. Midgard glows with the last of twilight, and in the distance, you hear the faint crack of a ship's sail unfurling. Travelers still move. Legends still breathe. And somewhere beneath your feet, the roots of Yggdrasil pulse with quiet life. You step forward toward Jotunheim, toward giants. Because this tree doesn't just hold beauty, it holds everything. You keep walking because how else do you explore a tree that spans dimensions? The roots deepen the mist, thickens, and ahead the air shifts. Cooler now, wiser, wilder. You're heading into Jotunheim, the land of the giants. Yes, those giants. Not just big lumbering brutes from children's cartoons, though, to be fair. Some of them were absolute units. But in Norse myth, the Jotnar, as they're properly called, are more than just oversized enemies. They're elemental forces, ancients, chaos incarnate. And Yggdrasil holds them too. Jotunheim, the land of the frost and mountain giants, lies across a river so deep it forgets its own name. The sky here is perpetually overcast, not with clouds, but with thick, glimmering fog, silver gray and sharp-edged like broken ice. Trees grow here too, but they're twisted, reaching sideways as if trying to crawl back into the soil. You pass a boulder the size of a cottage and realize it's not a boulder. It's a sleeping giant. His beard is moss. His breath is fog. His dreams are weather systems. You keep moving. The giants didn't live under the tree. They were of it, as old as the gods, and possibly older. Ymir, the primordial giant, was the first being to emerge in Norse myth. Born from the collision of fire and ice in the yawning gap of Ginnungagap, try saying that 5 times with a mead hangover. Ymir's body, once slain by Odin and his brothers, became the world his flesh, the earth his blood, the seas, his bones the mountains, his skull the sky. That's right. The Norse didn't just live in a giant tree. They lived on a dead giant. Try not to think about that the next time you go hiking. Historians still argue whether Ymir was considered a literal creature, a symbolic abstraction, or a mythic metaphor for the raw chaos that had to be tamed to create order. Whatever the truth, his death seeded the universe. And his kin, the Jotnar, were never quite done being annoyed about it. You spot movement now, a giantess tall and lean as a pine trailing smoke and snowflakes as she walks. She glances at you, but does not speak. She's part of the structure like a root, like weather. And you're tolerated, but barely. The gods of Asgard waged constant war against the Jotnar. Yet they also married them, birthed children with them, sought their counsel. It's messy. Awkward family dinners, kinda messy. Loki, god of mischief, half giant. Odin himself sought wisdom from a giantess. Even Thor, the hammer-happy storm god, couldn't resist a good wrestling match with a frost giant now and then. It's not just conflict, it's balance. Fire needs ice. Order needs chaos. The world tree doesn't grow in a vacuum. It feeds on friction. And here in Jotunheim, everything feels half wild. The terrain bucks like a storm caught in stone. Rivers run uphill just to spite you. Flowers bloom teeth. One moment it's twilight, the next a blizzard. You find a cave with runes carved along its entrance. The marks aren't warnings. They're invitations to wisdom, to madness, to whatever lies between. Inside, someone is brewing something in a cauldron. It might be tea. It might be prophecy. You decline to find out. Instead, you walk on. Because beneath the chaos of Jotunheim, there's a rhythm. Not everything here is rage and thunder. Some of it just is. Timeless, immutable. You pass a grove of ice-slick trees. They hum as the wind moves through them, and the sound is low and haunting, like whale song fed through a cracked horn. One of them has a face. You don't stare. The Norse saw giants, not just as antagonists, but as reminders that not everything can be tamed, that some forces are meant to be survived, not conquered, that sometimes the world doesn't want to be understood. You crouch beside a stream that glows faintly blue. The water tastes of copper and clouds. You feel watched, but not threatened. Just acknowledged. The giants aren't hiding. They're just not interested in small talk. And above you, always Yggdrasil. Its roots dig deep into Jotunheim, not to trap it, but to balance it, to link the known with the unknowable. The structured halls of the gods with the storm-churned land of their oldest enemies. You take one more breath of Jotunheim, crisp, unsettling, unforgettable, and begin to climb, upward again, toward another realm, toward something darker. Helheim awaits, and no matter how brave you feel, you probably won't enjoy this next cup. The climb down into Helheim is colder than you expect, not icy like Jotunheim, but colder in a quieter, deeper way. Not the cold of winter storms, but the cold of basements, of locked rooms, of breath held for too long. You walk slowly. The moss underfoot fades to stone. The roots of Yggdrasil here are thicker, heavier, so old they seem fossilized. They twist and coil like sleeping serpents, slick with dew, and something darker. This is Helheim, the land of the dead. Not the battlefield glory halls of Valhalla, mind you. That's up top reserved for warriors who die with a sword in hand and a dramatic exit. This place is different. It's where everyone else goes. Old age, sickness, slipping on wet stairs, eating one too many oysters. Helheim doesn't judge, it just receives. And it's ruled by a goddess of the same name, Hel. Half-living, half-dead Hel is often described with a face split down the middle one side, youthful the other, a sunken skull. She doesn't scream. She doesn't chase. She simply waits, politely, eternally. You enter through a stone archway, lined with twisted branches and faintly glowing fungi. No gate guards, no signposts. Just the hush of a place that's had time to forget everything but the waiting. A soft wind brushes past, and you swear it smells like cedar-old paper and worn wool. The first thing you notice, quiet. Not silence. Quiet. The kind of quiet that grows on you. That presses gently at your temples. That listens harder than you do. You walk through a grove of leafless trees, each one etched with faint markings. Names, perhaps. Stories. The bark peels like ancient skin. Beneath them, small bundles of cloth rest against the trunks. Offerings. Memorials. Forgotten funerals. You don't touch. Hel's realm isn't cruel. It's just still. The Norse didn't think of it as hell, not in the fire and brimstone sense. There was no eternal punishment, no lakes of lava, just a continuation, a settling, like the dregs at the bottom of a cup. Historians still argue whether Helheim was feared, pitied, or simply accepted. Some sagas describe it as dreary, others as peaceful. Most agree it was unavoidable, which in a way makes it the most honest of all the realms. You pass a stream that doesn't gurgle. It just moves, dark and slow and mirror-like. A pale fish swims beneath the surface and vanishes under a root. You follow the path deeper. Eventually, you come to a clearing where a low fire crackles more for symbolism than heat. A figure sits beside it, robes of deep indigo, a face you can't quite remember after you look away. You sit too. There's tea here? Of course there is. It's black and bitter, brewed from herbs you've never seen before and probably never will again. It tastes of bark and bone and endings. Not unpleasant. Just final. The woman Hel probably nods. No speech, no lecture, but the message is clear. Even in Helheim, there is hospitality. You sip again, and slowly the flavors shift. Not sweeter exactly, but softer. Less like an ending, more like a memory you're ready to hold. Because tea in Norse belief wasn't a literal part of Helheim. Not that we know of, but the idea of warmth of shared breath in cold places is older than writing. It's what you carry into the dark. What you offer, even when there's nothing else left. The fire pops, the figure disappears. You sit a while longer, not out of fear, but respect. Helheim is a realm of closure, of long sleeps and longer dreams. No crowns, no punishments, just the hush of the end of things. You rise your bones a little slower now, your breath just visible in the cool air. And you climb, back upward through roots as wide as rivers, past stones slick with the tears of remembered names, past one final tree etched with runes that flicker when you look at them sideways. Because Yggdrasil holds even this, even the places we don't want to see, even the ones we never speak of. The world tree is not a fairy tale. It's a mirror, and it reflects all of it. Above you glimpse faint light, warmer air, the smell of mead and apples. You're not out yet, but you're closer now. And next stop. The gods are waiting. You surface into brightness, not the sunlight of Midgard or the shimmering frost of Jotunheim, but something softer, rounder. A gold that feels earned. You brush moss from your shoulders and realize you've reached a higher branch of Yggdrasil, one cradled by something vast, warm, and very much alive. You've reached Asgard. Yes, that Asgard. Home of the Aesir gods. You know a few already? Thor, Odin, Frigg, Baldur. But now you're walking the paths they paced under skies painted like oil on water. Clouds trail like banner cloth above carved wooden halls. Ravens wheel overhead. Somewhere a blacksmith's hammer strikes rhythm into the air. And Yggdrasil towers here too. Not just in mythic roots and canopy shadow, but in its presence, its being. You sense it in the way the air hums, in the way the wind curls around your ear, like it's got secrets to tell. You pass through a wide stone gate, watched by a man with one eye and two wolves. He doesn't speak. He doesn't have to. This is Odin, and you're on his turf now. To the Vikings, Asgard was not just a home for gods. It was a pinnacle, a cosmic boardroom where fate was debated, battles were mapped, and the occasional mead binge spiraled out of control. It was also one of the key branches of Yggdrasil, a place of the tree, on the tree within the tree. You step into a courtyard where gods lounge like warriors on holiday. Thor is laughing somewhere behind a pillar. A woman with gold-threaded braids sharpens a spear and nods in your direction. A younger god offers you a horn of something frothy and suspiciously smoky. You sip. It's spicy and probably sentient. They're hosting a feast tonight. Not because there's something to celebrate, but because that's what gods do when they have time to think. They eat, they drink, they predict. One god throws a polished stone into the fire and watches the flame flicker blue. Another sketches runes into the dirt with the end of a staff. A third consults a squirrel, which, okay, weird flex, but apparently Ratatosker. The gossip squirrel is the fastest courier in all the realms. You're shown to a table. No seat assignments here, just find a spot. And try not to offend Loki, who's already halfway into a bowl of fish soup and talking to himself. A thick manuscript sits beside a goblet, bound in hide, covered in runes, titled Ragnarok Draft Number 6. You slide it away slowly. The thing about Asgard is this: it's both above and before. these gods live in a strange loop, always preparing for the end of the world, always aware that their saga ends in fire and frost. And yet, they live, they joke, they argue about stew spices. Historians still argue whether the Norse saw the gods as immortal ideals or just stronger, more complicated versions of themselves. Were Odin and his crew truly divine, or were they aspirational figures, mythic ancestors with fancier gear? Most sagas suggest a bit of both. What's clear is the gods of Asgard didn't float on clouds and hand out blessings like candy. They fought, they wept, they failed. Odin gave his eye for wisdom. Baldur was killed by a trick involving mistletoe. Even Thor, mighty Thor, couldn't swim. They were flawed, but aware. Powerful, but doomed. And Yggdrasil held them too. The World Tree wasn't their playground. It was their anchor, their place. Even they were part of it, branches within a branch, leaves curling on a divine stem. Nothing above the tree, nothing beyond it. A feast begins. You're handed a plate. There's roasted elk, honeyed bread, and something described only as sky cheese. You don't ask. A toast is raised. Odin speaks of roots and cycles, of the need to remember and the burden of foreseeing. He quotes a line from the poetic Edda, half in riddle, half in warning. I know that I hung on a wind-battered tree 9 long nights pierced by a spear. You swallow hard. Because yes, Odin hung from Yggdrasil to learn the runes, sacrificed himself to himself. It's one of the more metal things ever written, but it also means this even gods must pay to understand. You glance up at the ceiling beams, carved with spirals and serpent shapes. The smoke rises in slow threads, like branches seeking their way back into the sky. A quiet falls across the table. The feast ends. No bang, no chant. Just the soft scrape of bowls and the shuffle of tired immortals heading to their rooms. You rise too. Odin nods, once curt, tired, approving. Thor offers you the rest of his bread. Loki flips a coin and pockets it before it lands. You step outside. The air is crisp again. And you realize you're not done climbing yet. There's one more path to follow. One more story perched even higher in the canopy. One more secret resting in the leaves. You climb. The feast is behind you now. Asgard's warmth receding like a dream you can still smell, but no longer touch. The night sky stretches overhead, pierced with stars, each one a flicker of memory or myth. You're higher now than you've ever been, and yet the branches of Yggdrasil still rise above, endlessly curling through the dark like celestial rivers. You follow a trail that is more instinct than path. Moss gives way to mist. Your breath clouds in the air. And then you arrive. It's not a hall, not a garden, not even a grove. It's a void, or maybe a seed. The Vikings called it Ginnunga Gap, the yawning gap, the cosmic nothing that once was everything. Here the world tree doesn't just grow, it begins. You stand on the edge of this ancient chasm, and for a moment, the wind doesn't blow and the stars don't blink. Time forgets how to move. You feel the presence of something old, older than gods, older than stories. The space before. According to Norse myth, Ginnungagap is where it all started. Before the tree, before the worlds, before light or shadow. On one side was Muspelheim, realm of fire. On the other, Niflheim, land of ice. Where they met, this was the gap, and from it came life. Not from harmony, but from collision. Fire met frost, and from that chaos, the first being emerged Ymir, the primeval giant. Born not from a mother or a god, but from meltwater stirred by contrast. He fed on a cow. The cow Audumla licked salt from the ice and uncovered the first god Buri. And just like that, existence booted up like the weirdest video game tutorial you've ever heard. Historians still argue, Whether this origin myth reflects an actual cosmological philosophy or was just an epic metaphor for Nordic weather. Either way, it shows something important to the Norse life wasn't gifted. It was forged from clash, from frostbite, from fire burn. You sit at the edge of Ginnungagap now, and it feels both final and fertile. There's no tea here, no hearth, just the deep breath of the tree and the hush of beginnings. And yet, you're not alone. A squirrel darts by Ratatoskr again maybe, or just a cousin. It chirps once and vanishes into a knothole. Something about this space feels circular. You sense that the branches above are also roots below. That the end touches the start. That every tale, no matter how messy or heroic, spirals back here eventually. Which brings us to the weirdest part of Viking cosmology, the idea that Yggdrasil isn't just a tree between worlds. It is the world. All of it. The frame, the flesh, the memory. It connects realms, not like a bridge, but like a spine. Muscles grow from it. Blood flows through it. When gods die, they feed it. When mortals dream, they rest against it. It's not just a metaphor. It's a place. And that place is alive. There are whispers here. Not voices exactly, but the feeling of words you've forgotten. A child's name. A lost ship. The scent of pine after thunder. The tree remembers. You reach out to touch the mist. And in that moment, you see it not with eyes, but with some ancient part of yourself. The roots reaching into shadow where serpents gnaw and corpses rot. The trunk wide as the sky holding the weight of battles and births. The branches curling through stars dusted with frost and prophecy. It's all there. It's always been there. And maybe it's always been watching. A question drifts into your mind. Did the Vikings believe the tree would last forever? The answer: not exactly. Because in the Ragnarok myth, the Norse vision of the end Yggdrasil trembles. It shudders under the weight of war. Wolves chase the sun and moon. Fire giants rise. The seas boil. The tree creaks, cracks, and holds. Not perfectly, not without scars, but it survives. And from the ashes of the worlds, a new shoot sprouts. That's the thing the Norse got right, maybe better than anyone else. They didn't expect permanence. They expected cycles, loss, rebirth, branches falling, new ones rising. The tree always changing, but always rooted. You sit with that thought a while. No gods interrupt. No frost giants roar. Just the breath of the gap and the weight of the stars. Then slowly, you rise. Not because the story is done, but because the tree is still growing, and you're part of it now. You turn toward the path leading down, or maybe forward. It's hard to tell, but one thing is certain. You've stood on the edge of the beginning, and something ancient smiled back. You descend quietly now. Not out of fear, not even reverence, but that kind of hush that comes when your soul is full. Like after a song that leaves you breathless, or a goodbye you didn't expect to matter. The night hums around you, and the bark of the world tree seems to glow faintly, though it might just be your thoughts catching moonlight. You're not retracing your steps. Not exactly, because something's changed. You've been to the base and the branches and the edge of the gap where stories are born. And now, with that last climb behind you, the world beneath your feet feels less like terrain and more like meaning. You step carefully past the well of Mimir, still deep and utterly unreadable. You pass a fox curled beneath a root, dreaming of things only animals understand. You pass an empty bowl perched on a stone rim, stained green with old tea and time. You nod at it like an old friend, and then just past a crooked birch tree, you see it a carving, rough half erased by rain, but unmistakable. A figure with antlers, another with wings, A tree with 3 roots and 9 loops. It's graffiti, basically, but ancient graffiti. Vikings weren't known for leaving diaries. They didn't write theological treatises. They didn't paint Sistine Chapel ceilings, but they carved. They etched. They whispered their stories into wood and bone and stone, then let the wind handle the publishing. Yggdrasil appears in these carvings not always by name but always by shape. A looping trunk, a serpent at its feet, a falcon at its crown. Some scholars believe these images were less literal maps and more reminders of connection, of scale, of the fact that you, a small sack of skin and worry, are somehow also part of a cosmos that breathes through leaves. You rest your hand against the carving. The stone is cold, but it feels kind. And then a thought sneaks in. Why a tree? Why not a mountain or a river or a giant wheel? Why did the Norse put all of life, God's humans, monsters' fate, on a tree? Historians still argue whether the concept of the world tree originated from shamanic practices, Indo-European sky cults, or was just a really compelling metaphor some clever skald came up with after staring at a spruce too long. But trees in all their silent majesty do make sense. Trees are rooted and rising. They connect below and above. They grow in circles. They shed, renew, and resist. They outlive kings, outlast wars, and they never rush. A tree doesn't conquer. It holds. To the Norse, that was enough. And maybe, just maybe, that's what we've forgotten. You walk on. The slope smooths out now. You see a clearing ahead lit by dawn's first suggestion of color. A small campfire still smolders there, the embers curling like sleepy dragons. Around it sit a group of travelers, faces you recognize from earlier moments in your journey. The cook who handed you a bowl in a crowded alley. The monk who brewed tea in silence. The child who chased a goat through a garden of plum trees. They're waiting for you. No one speaks, but one of them pours tea into a bowl and hands it your way. It smells of barley and fennel, and maybe a hint of frost. You sip. It's warm. Not perfect, not polished, but real. Just like the journey. And as the first light spills through the trees, catching on spider webs and dew-speckled moss, you finally understand Yggdrasil wasn't just their way of explaining the universe. It was their way of living in it. Connected, aware, rooted in memory reaching toward possibility. The Viking world wasn't built on conquest alone. It was built on place a sense that everything, even a squirrel's scamper or a raven's cry, belonged to something larger. And you've been part of that. Maybe not in armor, maybe not with axe in hand, but in story, in spirit. You close your eyes for just a moment and hear the echo of roots creaking far below branches, swaying far above, and the breath of an ancient world that never truly left. You've walked the tree now, from root to crown, and the only thing left is stillness. Not the kind that comes from nothing, the kind that comes from knowing. You sit at the edge of the clearing now, knees drawn to your chest bowl, resting beside you, long since empty. The sky above is a gentle gradient gray, turning to soft gold, like someone whispering color into the dark. The birds haven't quite started yet. The wind is still deciding whether to rise. And there, in the hush of the final stretch, your mind drifts not backward, but inward. You think of that first step, the early rustle of leaves underfoot, the feel of bark under palm, the sound of a stream that wasn't just water, it was memory. And you wonder, how did the Vikings feel really when they looked at the world and saw a tree? Not just a tree, but the tree, with a capital T and a mythic aura. To them, Yggdrasil wasn't poetic license. It was truth wrapped in metaphor. It was landscape layered with meaning. Every mountain, every spring, every tangle of branches, they didn't just see the world, they read it. The 9 realms weren't mapped with GPS. They were felt, layered, existing all at once. Midgard, the human realm, wasn't central because it was special. It was central because it was vulnerable, suspended in the middle of everything, watched by gods above, tormented by chaos below. And yet, still here, still sipping tea by a fire, still breathing, still trying to understand. You look down at the ground. The dirt is speckled with acorns. One of them is cracked, its seedling already pushing out. It'll take years, of course, maybe lifetimes. Maybe it won't survive the winter, but it's trying. And you realize that's what belief looked like in the Viking world. Not blind worship, not rigid dogma, but relationship to land, to breath, to the things you couldn't name but still felt beneath your ribs. Even the gods weren't static. Odin wandered. Thor raged and stumbled. Freya wept. Loki. Well, Loki did Loki things. The divine wasn't separate from the messy. It was the messy, woven into it like strands of birch bark, and Yggdrasil. It held it all. Joy and death, laughter and ash, storm and lull. A squirrel racing past a corpse, a dragon whispering to roots, a silent stag watching from above. All of it sacred, all of it seen. Historians still argue whether this tree was originally shamanic, cosmic symbolic, or if it was just the Vikings being poetic in their own fierce frostbitten way. But that's the thing about myth. It's slippery. It won't hold still. You can't pin it down with a thesis. You just live it. Let it echo. Let it guide. Let it root you. You take a deep breath now. In through the nose, slow and full. The kind of breath that fills more than your lungs. Because you're about to leave this place. Not forever, but for now. And just before you rise, you hear something. Faint. A whisper maybe, or wind, or memory dressed as birdsong. It says, remember, not everything. Just enough. Enough to know the world is wider than it seems. Stranger. Deeper. Older than we give it credit for. You rise quietly. Brush the moss from your robes, or maybe just your blanket. You take one last look at the sky, now streaked with silver and rose. You step away from the fire, and the path opens. Not forward, not back, just open. You smile and walk. Let your shoulders relax. Let the edges of the world soften. You're not in the land of frost giants anymore, not clinging to roots or climbing toward ravens. You're here, now, present. But maybe you brought something back. Maybe you carry just a bit more stillness, a little more wonder, a sense that somewhere deep inside the quiet parts of your mind, a tree still grows. One you can return to anytime you need it. Its branches reach out when you're tired. Its roots hold you when you're lost. Its leaves rustle gently when your thoughts get too loud. That tree doesn't ask anything of you. It doesn't require belief, only attention. So, let yourself drift. Let your breath slow. Let the rhythm of your thoughts mimic the sway of that ancient trunk, unhurried, unbroken, unworried. You've traveled far tonight, from the base of the myth to its highest leaf, from ancient fires to quiet cups, from Viking verse to the hush of now. It's okay if you don't remember every name, or every god, or every realm. The myth will remember you, and in some quiet way it will be waiting the next time you need stillness, or magic, or just a really big cosmic tree to lean against in your imagination. So rest. Let the stories settle. Let your breath ease into the dark, like a ship into mist. The world is vast. Thank you for joining us on this journey today. Maybe by now, you've already drifted off to sleep, and if so, We hope this story brought you peace of mind and helped you rest a little easier. Deep sleep makes life better, and we're truly happy to be part of that. Until next time, good night, dreamer of roots and stars.